There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with a short review of a novel I finished at the very end of 2019. Luna by Sharon Butala. Sharon Butala is a Saskatchewan writer, and she is one of my mom's very most favorite writers. So I was a little bit nervous to read my very first Sharon Butala because I didn't want to upset my mom by not liking it. And I was doing it as a buddy read with Britta Bowler, and, you know, it's a novel from my home province, Saskatchewan in Canada, and what if Britta didn't like it? Well, happy ending. We both loved it. So, this is her second novel, I believe, published in 1988, and it is set in a rural ranching community in southern Saskatchewan. My family farm is not that far south, although my grandmother was born where Sharon Butala lived on a ranch for decades. So I'm somewhat familiar with this part of the world. This is a story of prairie women, 3 generations. I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't want to give away the ending. So 3 generations of women. There's Rhea, and she is the aunt. And then she has 2 nieces, Selena, who is the focal protagonist for most of the story, and Selena's sister Diane, and Selena's daughter Phoebe. There are spouses as well. But this is a story of prairie women, and what an emotionally compelling story it is. I don't want to tell you too much about the plot. Rhea is in her mid to late 70s as far as I can tell, and this story seems to be set in maybe the 1970s. Rhea is old enough to remember threshing machines, so that would put her at about my grandma's age in the 1970s, so that fits. And her nieces, the main character, Selena and Diane, they have children ranging from about age 17 on down. And then Phoebe, I think she's 17 as the story opens. What a powerful story of women's lives, and I want to sit down and talk with my mom about how much of this she had to face, because it wasn't pretty. I love the community of women that are shown in this story. What made this novel work for me is that the men are not assholes. They are fully drawn, and Butala makes us like them and respect them to a large degree. The 2 main characters, the spouses of Selena and Diane, so that when they exhibit male chauvinist peg attitudes that have severe repercussions, it's one spouse in particular, but I'm not going to give you any specifics, that just expresses a view about women and sexuality that is so horrific, but we already care about him, and he's a well-rounded character. So Butala makes us wrestle with and not just apply some superficial social-political analysis to the book. She makes us wrestle with these real, live, lovable characters as they muddle through and sort through their lives. There are tales here of sexual violence and misogyny and out-and-out sexism in terms of women's roles on the ranch that these women struggle against, accommodate, and try to push through. It's not a perfect novel. There are times when one character who's going through more kind of a, not new age, but almost akin to a new age rebirth, and the way that she talks about that journey, she seems like a space cadet to me, but I think Butala wanted the reader to experience her that way, as well as see her humanity, and Butala does show the underlying humanity of that character. So there's a few little things that might be glitches. Not all of the dialogue was stunning. The descriptive passages of life on a ranch and the day-to-day lives of these women were unforgettable. So I recommend it highly. I don't even know if it's in print. I didn't bother to check. I bought this at a secondhand store in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan last year, and it is signed by Sharon Butala. I think it's still fairly available, at least secondhand on the internet, but may still be in print. I hope it should still be in print. I will do the research that I should have done before I started this video and put an update textually here. Britta and I both independently arrived at making a connection between this novel and the absolutely gut-wrenching, stunning novel Women Talking by Miriam Toews, which is a stark women-centered novel about female characters under a much more dire situation that encompasses some of the themes of this book. And even though that one is so stark and this one is much more modulated by kind of everyday life and some positive experiences, there is a resonance between them. So if you loved women talking, I do recommend this to you especially. But if you're interested in a novel of rural life and women struggling and celebrating their lives, oh my God, this is it. So I'm going to close with a little bit of a long passage because I uncharacteristically haven't nattered away for too long, that gives you a sense of the writing. This is one of my favorite passages. Rhea, the oldest character in the book, she lives at home alone. All of her children live away. She's a widow, and she has never stopped making bread in a wood stove, despite her children and nieces trying to persuade her to get a modern oven. It's the 1970s, for God's sake, but she refuses. And the passage, I'm only going to read you a page, but it goes on for several pages. It's just a tour de force of identity through work, identity through an almost artisanal joy at making things, making bread. There are characters referred to, some are incidental and some are main characters that I've referred to, but you don't need to keep track of any of them for this to resonate. This time she sets the yeast, puts the lard and some salt and sugar into the warm water she has poured into the basin, and stands, one hand on her hip, while the yeast slowly rises in its dish beside the basin. She is reminded of when she was a girl, and the threshing crew was at her father's place. She used to rise with her mother at 4 every morning to set the buns for breakfast. Once they got the first batch of buns or bread started, they never used yeast again. Just saved a small piece of dough from the previous morning and mixed it into the fresh dough. It was enough to leaven the whole batch. Then around 7, the crew had fresh, hot buns for breakfast. She and her mother and the hired girl sweating in the kitchen for weeks on end. Then, later, a grown woman in her own kitchen, baking 20 loaves of bread at a time to sell to the bachelors of the district, old Appleby, Jake Johns, Shorty Small, old Ryhorchuk, and that blessed Lowen who never would pay her, till she wouldn't give him any more bread. And every week baking another 12 loaves for her own family. Oh, I've made enough bread in my day, she thinks. The yeast is ready, and she stirs it carefully, then tests the temperature of the mixture in the big basin by dropping it onto her wrist. Just right. And Selina, wanting a recipe. A recipe! You do it till you get it right. Then that's the way you do it from then on, she had told her. She pours the yeast slowly into the big basin, then stirs carefully. She made Selina and Diane do it over and over again in her kitchen, while they were still girls, after Maud died. Selina never did get it quite right, but good enough, she supposed. Diane never could do it at all. She shakes her head. Buying her bread. Women don't know any more, she thinks. Don't know what bread making is for. What it means to make your own bread. So, as I like to end my reviews, if any of that sounds good to you, I heartily recommend Luna by Sharon Butala to you. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.